welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to talk about my tips for kind of buying your first horse, because I kind of, over the last 2 years that I've had Ruby, I've seen kind of a lot of people get horses and it not be kind of a pleasant experience, or they get horses that are unsuitable or they have issues, and it just kind of ends up making the whole thing very stressful and very kind of, like just not a pleasant experience. Whereas if you I think if you do kind of put a bit of research and a bit of time and thought into it, it can be. So like I really like the general advice I was getting when I wanted to get Ruby was don't do it. Just that it's a massive commitment, and you're probably not as experienced and maybe you just be better off keeping going with the lessons. But I kind of knew myself that the lessons just weren't enough for me. Like I knew I'd kind of plateaued, I'd improved as much as I could on the riding school horses, and I kind of knew that I wanted to have my own horse to kind of develop a bond with, set my own goals with, that I would have full control of how we would get there. Obviously with a riding school horse, different people are riding them all the time. They could be undoing work that you're doing with them. It's just, you are kind of limited. Now they are brilliant for learning to ride, and if you are the kind of person who just wants to ride 3 or 4 times a week and have no other commitment or no other expenses, it's perfect for you. But I just kind of felt that I was limited in how much I could progress with them after a while. So I started to look for my own horse, and I didn't really have any help because I just kind of gone to a riding school. They weren't kind of, I don't know, I just didn't really have anyone that could help me, because the other people I knew, they were all just they were all just kind of getting lessons in the riding school too. Like I had a lot of horsey friends, but none that actually had their own horse, and that was something I really wanted to get into. So I kind of researched it, and I kind of had a pretty clear vision in my head of what I wanted, and I think this is really important. So my first kind of tip would be to, first of all, know why you want the horse. Is it because you're interested in kind of training your own horse and putting your own stamp on them and kind of bringing them up and achieving your goals with them? Is it because you just kind of want to have more input into the care aspect of your horse? You kind of want to be able to do more groundwork, you kind of want to have more flexibility with when you can ride. So like, know your why, because if your why is just I want to ride more regularly, just be aware that there is a lot that comes with owning a horse that isn't riding. Like I would say if I ride like 4 or 5 times a week now, I'm lucky, like, just because other care aspects kind of get in the way a lot. So so just kind of know your why you want the horse. Is it, if it is to kind of progress, have a bond, put your own stamp on them, learn more, then they're probably good reasons for why you should consider getting your own horse. The second thing is to have a clear vision of what you want. So if your goal is to enter dressage competitions and start off at intro and then work up to prelim, or you're probably not, it's probably not going to serve you to get a horse that has only hunted up until this point, has been broke and just hunted, because they don't have a clue about flat work. If you're still learning the ropes, you're going to need to teach them, and you're probably better off getting a horse that can teach you for your first horse. So for instance, for me, I wanted to really kind of progress in dressage. So Ruby has competed up to novice on her passport in dressage. She came from a dressage yard, and her flat work is pretty good. Like, a lot of the issues we have is kind of me not not riding correctly or just not being consistent enough, but like her flat work there was a good basis there. It wasn't like I tried to put her on a 20-meter circle and she was like, what are you doing, what are we doing? So yeah, equally, if you want to hunt, then you're probably better off not getting a dainty little thoroughbred that has only done dressage or has only done show jumping. You probably want something like a draft kind of cross or a cob that has been, you know, used to hunting and knows the drill when you go on hunts. So yeah, just know what you're looking for. I know all rounders are popular, and I would just kind of say, like, yeah, that they're fine, but just like, do you have something that you like? Because we all have something that we particularly enjoy. Like for me, it's flat work. I just love flat work. I love dressage. I love schooling. I love watching videos of it. I love it. So, and I'm always looking for ways to improve and stuff. But other people, I know it's jumping. They love jumping. They love watching jumps. They love, you know, the thrill of it. So I would be like, what is the most important for you, like what's the most important thing that the horse can do for you? So if you want to compete in dressage, a knowledge of flat work is the most important thing. If you want to jump, it would be important that they've had some jumping experience and that they're, you know, well versed in jumping. So pick out the most important thing and then look for a horse that excels in that, or is, you know, has a good bit of experience doing that. The third thing, I think I'm on the third thing. The third thing I always look at is the age of the horse. So I know, like, yeah, I know it's kind of hard to kind of get an older horse, because I know in your head you'd be thinking like, oh, well, they won't live that long, or, you know, they're kind of past their prime or whatever. But actually, like 10, 11, 12, like horses still have plenty going them. Like horses can live up to 25, 30, and they can still be going fairly well at those ages. So I think actually getting a well-established horse is probably a better fit for someone who's a beginner, as opposed to getting a younger horse and it, you know, and it being inexperienced and it's kind of a green horse, green rider, that kind of phrase that makes black and blue. So yeah, you're probably better off with an older horse that's more experienced, and that can show you, you can learn from, and they've been around the block. You're not introducing them to things for the first time. My fourth tip would be to forget about looks. I suppose, like, you know, that phrase that a good horse isn't a bad colour, which is true. So kind of, I know it's really easy to vision in your head, like your horse with the long flowing mane and your Lemieux saddle pads on them and going around doing your fancy flat work or your jumps or whatever. But actually, like, you're much better off with a horse. Obviously you need to prioritise kind of health, training, temperament. Like, there's just so many other important things other than how they look, and if you do find a horse that ticks all those boxes and they happen to look nice, then that's great. But I wouldn't go out with the main priority being like, I want a chestnut mare, or I want a dun gelding, because I mean, like, it's just, the market's just not like that. You're gonna have to compromise on what you would want looks wise to get a nice horse with a good temperament. So the next kind of set of tips will be for when you're actually viewing the horse. So when you go to view a horse, obviously give them the once over with you know, like, is there any sores? Are they in good condition? How do their eyes look? Do they look bright? Do they look alert? What's their living conditions like? What are they being fed? You know, all those kind of things. Then the next thing, I would make sure when you're seeing the horse being ridden, that someone else rides the horse first, because you don't want to be getting on a horse that you don't know without without someone riding them first, basically, because you don't know the horse. It could be dangerous. So yeah, you want to see that the horse is being ridden first and is happy enough with whoever is riding them, and just to see how they ride as well, because if someone is getting on and they have a completely different riding style to you, it might not work because the horse has been trained that way. So yeah, so then the next thing would be to, once you've seen the person ride the horse, make sure that they ride on both reins, because I know a lot of people will just ride on the good rein and they won't ride on the bad rein. So make sure that they're being ridden on both reins, and then you can get on the horse, obviously. I would bring someone, or else, yeah, I would try and bring someone who can nearly give you a mini lesson on the horse. Because obviously if you go on your own, you can't really see what's going on, whereas if you've got someone on the ground who can nearly kind of instruct you. Or sometimes, I don't know, I kind of found as well when I'd be trying horses and there'd be like a load of people looking at me, and because it was my first time, I was kind of like, oh god, what do I do? I'm on the horse now, okay, I better trot in a circle. Or sometimes it's just nice to have someone there that can direct you, so you can just like focus on riding the horse rather than thinking about what to do, if that makes sense. So yeah, so I would try and bring someone who can give you a lesson, who can take videos. Taking videos is very important. Yeah, and I would try and ride in all 3 gaits and maybe do a little jump if jumping is something that you are interested in or you're buying the horse for. I didn't personally jump because, I mean, I think I could like count on my two hands the number of times I've jumped Ruby, so there was no point in me jumping because it just wasn't something I wanted to do regularly. So yeah, I would bring someone who can give you a mini lesson. Bring someone that can take videos. Make sure you ride the horse on all 3 gaits on both reins, and yeah, and then maybe when you get off, I would say like kind of pick up their feet, just kind of run your hand over their body, notice if there's any kind of tender spots or if they've got any kind of behavioural issues on the ground. Try and lead them around, just sort of all the kind of maintenance sort of checks that, I mean, people think they're a small thing, but they actually are important. Like if you have a horse that you can't pick out their hooves or you won't pick up their feet, I mean, it's a bit of a nightmare. It turns into a bit of a nightmare really quickly. So yeah, so I would do the kind of maintenance checks, and then I would unless you're really keen on the horse, I wouldn't say yes or a definite yes to the seller there and then. Obviously you would have to, even if you were keen on the horse, it would have to be pending a vet check. So the next thing is, if you are interested in the horse or you think you might be, say, you would need to arrange a vet check. So I think, oh god, no, I can't, is it 5-stage vetting and then there's 3-stage vetting? I can't remember. But basically ring your vets or the vets that are closest to the horse, and ask, say you want to purchase a horse and you need to get them vet checked because it's very important, because you don't want to be buying something that has kind of hidden issues that you will spend like hundreds on trying to fix later on down the road and have the heartbreak and upset of it all. So I would say arrange the vet check. If you kind of need to mull it over or you have a few kind of runner-ups, I would get in the car and maybe make some notes on your phone of the ride immediately after, so you kind of, it's fresh in your head. Look at the videos, go home, look at the videos, and then basically, depending on yay or nay whether you want to proceed or not, arrange the vet check. And pending the vet check, if at all possible, I would like to be there for the vet check. I actually wasn't with Ruby, I just wasn't feasible, but I was happy enough with the, I trusted that everything was in order, so I went with it anyway. But yeah, basically when I went to view Ruby, I I did all the above suggestions, and I just loved her. So I actually told the lady, I kind of went against my own advice. I told the lady, yeah, I think I'll take her. I loved her. And then it was just pending the vet check, and once she passed the vet check, I took her home. So yeah, but again, when I went to look for Ruby, it was kind of, I wanted a horse that had good knowledge of flat work, which she did, good manners. She's actually got good breeding, although that wasn't really a criteria for me. But if it is, if you, well, to be honest, I think maybe for your first horse you won't really be thinking about breeding, particularly because they tend to be on the older side, but it is just nice kind of to know that they're well bred, I suppose, just an added extra. And yeah, I just loved her. I thought she was great. She was the best of all, and I went to see a lot. And it was very hard because some of them were just gorgeous, and I remember going to see like a chestnut gelding in Kerry, and he was just like gorgeous, but he was only 5, and I just kind of knew he was just too young to, like, I mean, he was only recently broke. It just would have been I would have had to try and teach him, and bearing in mind I didn't really know myself, it would have been a disaster. So yeah, so Ruby was 12 when I bought her, and I think that was a perfect age because she's not, you know, she's not, definitely not lacking any energy, but she's not, I mean, I could only imagine what she would have been like when she was 3 or 4 or 5. So yeah, I think 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, even older, slightly older, up to 15, I think is a perfect age to buy your first horse. And yeah, so then once you pass the vetting and you buy them, usually they'll ask for a deposit. So I would give the deposit unless you kind of think that, yeah, basically once you've decided, don't be giving deposits for every horse that you see, because like that's just going to be a waste of money. But once you have the one that you're settled on, give the deposit, and yeah, or make sure it's refundable in the event that they failed the vet check, or else give the deposit after the vet check. So yeah, that there would be all my kind of tips. Another thing would be to, if the seller is kind of like, oh, a lot of people are coming to view the horse, don't accept that. Don't let that influence your decision, because I mean, if it's meant to be, it'll be. Don't be kind of have your hand forced and buy a horse or take a horse if you know you not 100% on it, because it's just such a massive commitment. It'd be crazy to just to just not be kind of strong about it and pick out the horse that you want and get exactly what you want. And the second thing is, don't be afraid if it takes a few months. Unfortunately, like, it's not all just kind of you go pick one out like you're picking out a pair of shoes. It does take a while to kind of go around and look at everything, and even as you go around you'll kind of learn more about what you like and what you don't like. So it is kind of a learning experience as well, buying your first horse. So I would just be prepared. I would just embrace it and be prepared for it to take as long as it takes, but just don't settle. Never settle. Okay, so they're my tips on buying your first horse. I really hope that they were helpful. Again, I feel like I've had a very pleasant experience with